afternoon. At the tone, Pacific Daylight Time will be 5, 4, and 30 seconds.
What? Oh my God, we're having an earthquake. Wait a minute. Hold on. Can you feel that?
I sure can.
Okay, this is interesting. There go the lights. Oh.
It is the 17th of September 2019. We are here with Yvonne King talking about the 1989 Loma Prieta earthquake. Thank you for being here.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm glad to be here after that.
Can you start by telling me how long you've lived in Santa Cruz?
I've been in the Santa Cruz County area since 1964. Started teaching in Aptos, California.
Great. So what were you doing before, during, and after the earthquake?
All right. During the earthquake, 3 of us, colleagues in teaching, were at Mar Vista School in Aptos, which is basically 2 to 3 miles from the epicenter via where the crow flies. And we were preparing something. I know it was close to 5 o'clock, and we had just agreed that we would not go beyond 5:15. This could be the end. We were spending too much time having fun, and we would close it out. And 5:04, I believe, was the first shock. And that first shock was so dramatic that I dropped immediately and went under a desk probably about this size, knowing that this was something not to waste time looking around the room. And being on the floor, I could feel the tiles rippling. And of course, you know, it started with that one shock, and then it just intensified. And in my mind, it was like, oh, this is the one they've always talked about. This is the big one that's going to hit California. Oh my God, what do we do? Well, when you're in a room, you do the best you can. And we've been through lots of earthquake drills in the school system. So we stayed down and stayed under. 2 of us out of the 3 went down immediately. And we both had taught together at that school. 3rd person was from another school in Watsonville, and she ran hysterically around the room. And I had taken my dog that day, so she and my dog were running around the room, hysterical, the 2 of them. I could see the feet from her, I could see the forepaws of my dog underneath the chair, but they were just kind of circling around. We stayed there until the intensity lessened some. And now I can't tell you how much time it was. I know it was not long. And when it started to lessen, I said, we need to get out of here, because I could see the windows bowing, and the back wall was adobe bricks. And I had an end room, so I knew if we got out on the playground, there would be no wires, there would be no telephone poles. I said, we've got to get out of here. So we kind of inched our way under the desks. Grab your purse as you go out, because we're not coming back in. So we did that. And we got out on the playground, and there were some other teachers already out there who had been working late. And one of them had a radio, a battery radio, which was very helpful, because I kept thinking, oh my God, if it's this strong here, where is the epicenter? And of course, having lived in the Bay Area all my life, you know, gone through lots of earthquakes, but nothing like this one. And I knew this had to be the big one. So I was concerned about family. They're all up in the Bay Area. I knew I was okay, but you know, where is this coming from? The first reports we got on that news was that the Bay Bridge had some kind of a collapse, and that the Cypress Freeway had, I don't know if they call it pancaked at the time, but had come down. And I knew all those places. So in my mind, it was like the epicenter probably was in the Bay Area. Oh my God, how am I going to get in contact with family? You know, that type thing. So as we were standing out on that playground, there was an aftershock that was about a 5 point something. And I watched the building ripple in the windows from where we were standing. I thought, I'm so glad we're not inside at this point. I wanted to just be out here. I knew we were safe, perfectly safe there. So we stayed for quite a long time. And at this point, I turned to the colleague who was with us. She was from the Watsonville schools, one of the parochial schools. I won't mention names. And don't you ever practice earthquake drills at your school? She was the only one that ran around the room hysterical. And she said, all the time. She said, now I know that I get hysterical when something like this happens. She says, I know. She's a little bit, you know, higher end with anxiety. So we laughed about that. And Two of us were giving her a bad time about not practicing enough because we were public school and she was with private school. Anyhow, we stood there till we felt that probably it was safe enough to get on the road, and everybody, you know, needed to go home and check with their various spouses and families and things like that. So as I started down the road from the Aptos area on Soquel Drive looking towards Santa Cruz, I could see big billows of what I interpreted at that time to be smoke. And in my mind, I thought, oh, you know, we've gone through this, we've made it through, and now we're going to burn. We're going to have all the gas lines, you know, broke. Like I was thinking the 1906 earthquake in San Francisco, I've seen plenty of those photos. And I just thought, oh, what is this going to be like? And not knowing at the time that that was a combination of the dust and cement downtown. And people on boats told me later that they could see dust coming up from the hills, and I guess that was probably landslides going down, and then the puffs were coming up. So that's what I was seeing, but I didn't realize that at the time, and I was just like, oh, how do we get through this? One thing after another. So got to Soquel, and I fully expected my house to be down. It was a 2-story wood frame house. Just, it was a done deal, you know, it wasn't any question it would be down. As I pulled in the driveway, it was still up. And it was like, whoa, that's nice. But the 2 garage doors, which were metal and they had big, huge springs, were just thrown open and askew. But the house was still there. And my contractor friend who lives next door came over right away, and he said, man, he said, you should have seen your house moving around. He said, those wood houses are very impressive. He said it just, you know, kind of rolled with whatever direction it did fine. I mean, basically did fine. And I lived on the 2nd floor, and when I went in, like most people, it was like every library shelf, every library, because they were not attached at that time, we didn't do that. It was down, flat, books all over. Kitchen had glass covering the floor because everything had been thrown out of the cupboards. The refrigerator door did not get thrown open. I've heard about those experiences, and the refrigerator did not go over. I was glad at that, but it was just almost more to deal with, you know. It's like, I don't want to be here. I don't want to stay here. It's too scary. So I ran around and got a sleeping bag, got some clothes, got food for the dog. I left her, I have a truck at that time with a shelf. And I thought, you know, I'm going to stay in my truck. I don't know where, but I'm just going to stay in the truck. I do not want to be in a building. That's the last place I want to be in. This house was way too much to deal with. Mm-hmm. So as I packed up my things, I started to go out, and the phone rang. I thought, oh my gosh, that's really odd, because I just figured everything would be blitzed, you know, as far as communications. So I answered it. It was my brother, who lives in the Bay Area up near San Francisco, and he wanted to know how I was. And I'm usually pretty calm. And I said, I can't stand to be in here. I'm leaving. I'll call you later. You know, I'm just terrified right now. And he then called, I think, my sister and said, oh, our sister is just totally wigged out. She didn't want to talk to me. I told her I'd get in touch later. I wonder if they were okay, because I still didn't know where the Epicenter was, and they were okay. And I said, I'll get in touch later. So I just wanted to get out of that house. So I got in my truck and found some friends who we had all gathered in another friend's place over off of 38th. And she had an aunt in her 80s, and we all went over to that house. And the driveway looked pretty safe to me. I mean, there was lines or telephone poles, and I thought, a place for me to stay. Because I was intended to be in that truck for a while. There was no reason for me to go anywhere else. So we kind of stayed in and out of this house, and every time there was an aftershock, which was absolutely relentless. I mean, that first night, it was on and on and on. I don't know what the timing was, but you barely get time to sit down, and there was another aftershock. Then this aunt of hers, who was in her late 80s, kept looking at us, what's wrong with you guys? We'd all jump up and run outside, and she didn't do that. She said, what's the point? You know, her house rode it through, but we were just all in a state of, you know, still kind of panic and anxiety ridden and all that. So I remember staying there the first night, and it was so silent. There was eeriness to the silence. I mean, people weren't driving around. There was just no noise. You know, usually, and it was dusky. I know it was late in the evening, but sometimes you'll hear birds. There was just nothing in the air, nothing on the road, total quiet. And it was an eerie feeling to hear that much silence when you're not used to that. And I believe it was a full moon, because I remember a lot of light coming in. I was going to look that up. I remember a lot of light coming in the truck, which was kind of nice in a way, because we had no power, no electricity, and all that type of thing. So it was comforting to be in the truck, because I felt safe, felt that was okay. And one of the things that took place, which was interesting, is, you know, the stores lost the refrigeration. So many of them put out frozen foods, ice cream, meats, things that they couldn't refrigerate. And, you know, with a reasonable amount, they let people go through and take that. And the neighborhood barbecue cooked in the streets. You know, that was one person kind of brought their stuff out, and they would cook and fix food to everyone around, because the food was there, and the stores couldn't keep it anyhow. So I thought that was very cool. I mean, really gave a bonding, a sense of community, which we already had, but that even cinched it up, you know, more so. And it gives you a sense of everybody was in the same position and kind of like all taking care of each other. I know my neighbors came and turned off my gas for me, because I didn't have, you know, now you think about that, you know where your tools are, you have all that, turned off the gas, the water, all that, and I hadn't gone into that. It turned off my power to keep from having fire, but we're much more aware of that now than we were then. And let's see, I was going to say, what's the stress disorder they called it?
PTSD?
Yes. I would call it almost a feeling of probably what those people have. I was just on edge constantly. Any type of a sound that meant a crack, or that would maybe be another aftershock, you're just on edge all the time for a long. It's the most traumatic experience that I've ever had, that lasted as long as it did. It was just amazing, because I usually don't have that problem where it lasts as long, and I thought, will I ever, you know, get over this? And one of the things I know a lot of us wanted to do was to get out of this area, like within the first month, and just go somewhere where you didn't have to think about an aftershock. Nowhere in the Bay Area. So I know we went up to a friend's cabin up in the mountains near Arnold and spent some time up there. And that was nice, because you could just kind of go, oh, I'm in a place where you're not going to have that constant. And they lessened. The intensity lessened, but they were just so there all the time. It was just on your mind. And one thing I have to say, when we went back to school, which I don't know how much time we were out of school. I was going to say 5 to 10 days. I know, because they didn't have power and they didn't have all the things they need to have. When we went back to school, we never had an aftershock with the kids in the classroom. And I think that's kind of amazing, you know, the time element. But if there was ever a sound that sounded like something shifting, or something that was a sharp crack or a bang, it got totally silent in the room. Everybody would just stop in their tracks. And these were 6th graders, you know, and they would just wait for, like, what's next? But one of the really, I think, positive things that came out of this is that we got a lot of feedback at school from parents. And some of them came and talked to us, and some of them sent letters. They said, you know, these kids knew what to do. They told us in the house where to go to be safe. You know, because this was 5 o'clock in the evening, so many of them were at home, where parents were totally unprepared for that. I ran around and got hysterical, and the kids were saying, you know, get under this, get under that, stay away from the windows, you know, don't be doing this and that. And the parents were so impressed with their kids that they knew what to do. But we had a plan. We had earthquake drills, I think it was twice a year, and we'd get an envelope after the drill, and the drill would give you a scenario. in your particular classroom. And as the kids, were older, they got to be more serious things they needed to deal with. And I know with sixth graders, it was everything from you smelled gas, you have a kid that has a broken wrist, you think, you have somebody who's got blood coming down over here, 3 or 4 different things, and then I would just kind of let them work through it. They knew where the kits were as far as the first aid. So it was kind of interesting to see sixth graders work through those scenarios, and I think that helped them when they were at home, because they were in that mode. They had done this before as far as how do we deal with this, with glass on the floor and things coming down and stuff. So it paid off.
So you had pretty elaborate earthquake drills.
That was Pajaro Valley. It wasn't always the case, but they got more elaborate, and we did it, I think it was twice a year, but the first time we did it, we were all like, oh, is this going to work, but we felt it really was beneficial, particularly after the feedback we got after the quake, what the parents felt.
Did you personally have any natural disaster precautions in place? Did you do any emergency planning, or have you since then done any?
Well, I was also involved in the flood in '82, because I'm in a floodplain, and I was totally naive to that whole situation. And I've now learned, don't wait till they are going to get you out, because they get overwhelmed and they don't get around to evacuating everybody, and you need to take care of yourself. And I then, in the meantime, went through a fire up in the mountains, and I did the same thing. I immediately went down, got gas in my car, and left, because they don't need to be evacuating people, because people are just stupid, is what it is, or naive. You need to get out of there and let them do what they need to do. So yes, I was more preparation in that. I tried to keep my gas tank at least half full after the flood, and to be aware of what's going on around you. I wasn't prepared for this major quake, but I think I was better prepared after having been through the flood than prior to that. Like at school, we then went into, and again, this sets you up for your own house. We set up, the kids brought earthquake kits to school. So they had a whole set of things like toothbrush, they had snacks, they had a photo of maybe their family, note from the parents telling them they're wonderful, just a little home kit. And those were kept in a certain part of the room in case we had to be there overnight, was the plan. There were blankets and things. Each classroom had a bin that had everybody's little earthquake kits. And then at the end of the year, we had a party with a no earthquake party and got to sit and go through our things and look and see what people had and share the goodies and celebrate, and then they took those home. But that made me think what I should have at my house for myself and for animals, because I usually had a dog with me and keep us all safe. Let's see if I want to cover some things I did afterwards. And I don't know how much of this, was in my mind or not, but when I was on the floor and the tiles were rippling, I have worked in Nicene Marks for years as being on the advisory committee and also cutting trails, so I'm very, very familiar with the park. And I swear I had visions of that park at the time when I was down on the floor, and I don't know whether I was, getting vibrations because that's where the epicenter was, or whether, I don't know, but it just kind of blew my mind that I said to someone, I was thinking about Nicene Marks when those tiles were just moving up and down. But I went back later with Sandy Leiden and Jerry Wagner, who was the ranger at the time, because they wanted to share with me some things up on the upper ridges, and I had heard about this, but there was a ridge off of the Big Slide Trail way up by the summit, White's Lagoon, that had evidently been ripped one direction and then the other direction, and it was done so violently that the redwood trees snapped their tops off. And I thought, I gotta see this. And literally, when you went up there, it was like looking at small little tops of Christmas trees all over the ground. They just, I guess that part that's, supple at the top just snapped from the rest of the tree, and that was the Yeah, moving back and forth. That was very impressive. I was like, whoa. So I did go up and see that, and I did get in one of their crevasses or cracks because I wanted to do that and had a photo taken. I don't know where the photo is, but I had to do that as long as I was there because, I mean, how often you have that opportunity?
Sure.
Let's see. Many of the families at school, I slept in my truck. Many of them took mattresses and moved them so they could all be together and slept near some exit that was close to, say, a safe place, whether it was the deck or outside, but they all slept in this area where they could evacuate, basically because of these aftershocks. And I thought that was interesting. It was a nice way for the family to comfort each other. Because we talked about this when we got back, you know, what did you do at your house? And most of them slept on these situations where everybody was right near the door to get out. And some of them did sleep in cars and trucks for the same reason. Being in a building, I didn't want to shop in like a grocery store where they had things piled up. I just couldn't do that. All I could think was all this stuff's going to come down. And every time I go in a big building, I was looking to see, you know, where I could get under something. And I didn't like to stop on the freeway where you had an overpass over you. In fact, I found myself holding back a lot of times so I didn't have to get in that position. It was like, no, I'm not going to have that overpass come down on me. That was a long time. All those things kind of stayed with you as far as stuff coming down when you went in buildings and large places. You know, it was an uncomfortable feeling.
So the earthquake had an impact on your behavioral patterns.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Did it impact your life in any other way?
Well, just being prepared, you know, keeping what one needs on hand, you know, as far as food, water, something to sustain yourself if you're not able to get to stores. I know we live near things, but, you know, things stop. I mean, they couldn't get cars over the mountain the first night. I remember people being stranded at the baseball game up in San Francisco. You probably talked to some people who were in that situation. They had to stay overnight up there with various people they just picked up with. Yeah, let's see. I think I don't know if you want to keep that. I'll see if I've cover all these things I was thinking of last night.
Points.
Pardon me?
Finer points.
Yeah. The three of us who were in that quake used to get together each October 17th. Earthquake sisters. I was thinking I need to call them 30 years. Oh my gosh. You know, a lot of people don't realize who weren't in this area, because we didn't have power, we didn't get to see the visuals. We didn't see the television coverage. So everything was by, you know, people telling us what had happened, or the radio. And it wasn't until we got power back that we ever saw the images of things that had taken place, like downtown Santa Cruz, which was a pretty big deal. We didn't know that it was quite as bad as that, you know, because we just weren't seeing the images like you usually do on television. So that was always like, oh, we missed out on all that. Even though we were in the middle of it, we missed out on the coverage on television.
Did you end up going downtown at all after this?
Not immediately. I went to Nicene Marks before I went downtown. You know, that was kind of unnerving to see the damage down there. It was Pacific Garden Mall was so nice, and it was like, I don't really want to know it like this. And then it was so long before some of those places either were taken down or cleaned out, and then there were patches or big holes left for a very long time that never got built upon. It was like, this doesn't bring us good memories. I was always sorry that they took the Cooper House down so quickly.
Did you have fond memories of the Cooper House?
Yeah, I did. yeah, I liked the music there. The building itself, the architecture, I thought it was premature. I don't know why that came down so fast, but it did. Whatever. Yeah, it was hard to go downtown for a very long time, and even, up to a couple of years. In fact, what was it, the Christmas time, they put up those tents for people to shop. I did go down there because I was trying to support the businesses. They were just, doing the best they could. So they put those tents up on the back streets. We went down and shopped down there, but I didn't want to see the destruction. That was too hard to process. Oh, and the other thing around town was the blue tarps. Most of the chimneys, I don't know what the percentage was, the chimneys came down inside the houses, many of them did, and some, on the outside, but the bricks just failed. So people didn't have their chimneys to use their fireplaces, so because it was winter coming on in October, they just covered them with blue tarps. And all as you drove around town were the blue tarp roofs, were just blue tarps everywhere. And then the next phase, and you can still see it today, I saw one when I was coming here, where you see a brick fireplace up so far, and then you just see a metal thing coming out the top, and that's an insert that was put inside the original bricks, rather than taking the whole thing out, if the whole thing didn't go down. But those blue tarps were just everywhere, and I'm sure they must have sold out for miles around. We used to laugh about that. Oh, chimney came down from that place. I didn't have a chimney, so I didn't have that experience, but a lot of them said that the bricks came into the house. They came down through the flue type thing.
What a mess.
Oh yeah, like I say, I didn't have that, but the glass and the other stuff was everywhere in the house. The one place I had no problem going back to was my classroom, because I had been in that room during the quake, and having, ridden that out, and I knew nothing had come down and nothing had fallen in, that when we went back to school, I felt no problem. I felt more problem going to my own house, but not the classroom. I felt fine there. Yeah.
Is it because you knew that it was sturdy?
Having been there and knowing the intensity of the original quake, and knowing that, the windows didn't break, none of those bricks in the back, those adobe bricks, I haven't had an end room, came down. I just felt it can't be any worse, and if it is, everything's coming down. That's about it. That's the biggest one I think I'm going to experience in my lifetime, hopefully. That's the big one for me.
Yeah. What's it like to reflect on your experience 30 years later?
Oh, when I was driving today, I thought, how old was I then, 30 years ago? Oh my God, I had a lot to learn. I would have been 40 something. And I thought, oh my gosh, you don't realize all the things that are ahead of you, like the flood, which I had in '82, and then the fire up in the mountains, and we've had fires since then. But it's it makes you realize you need to prepare for these things and be as ready as you can be, with the physical aspect of it, the food, having your car with gas in it. I don't think you can prepare yourself for the actual, how you're going to react to it, the long-term effect. Because that's something each person has a little different reaction to, but they're long-lasting effects, I'll tell you. And I've been through a lot of earthquakes as a kid. I remember in the San Francisco Bay Area, but this one was a big one, I think.
This isn't on the sheet, and you can feel free to not answer it, but did you ever feel like you wanted to seek counseling, or did you seek counseling afterwards?
No, we did a lot of talking at school with the kids, and maybe that would be the counseling. They wanted to come back and just share all of their experiences. So we all kind of kicked out how we felt and how it was, and what we were scared of, and what helped us through. No, I didn't. But we did a lot of talking about the quake. In fact, my class at that point was to go to outdoor school within 2 weeks. That's why we were working that late that night in the classroom, trying to set up cabins. And some of the parents could not let their kids go for that week. And I'd never had that experience. They just could not feel those kids could go up in the mountains safely.
Was it going to be here in the county?
It was, trying to think of where it was. It was Camp Hammer, which is up by Boulder Creek, Big Basin. It's right adjacent to Big Basin. And I think we had a couple minor, probably would make sense, a couple minor aftershocks, but nothing big. I slept in my truck because I didn't like our accommodations, which happened to be on the bottom level of a big building. I thought, no, I've been sleeping in that truck for almost a couple of weeks. I can continue right here. They all laughed at me, but I said, you know, I feel safer there because I can move that. I can't get out of a building that fast. But I was sorry that some of the kids couldn't go with us, but parents just couldn't feel safe in letting their kids go. Weren't too many of them. I think there were 2 or 3. And, but I was glad the rest of them had enough trust in us to, well, we were going to be up there too.
Right.
We're all going to be together, so, yeah.
Is there anything else that you'd like to add that we haven't covered?
Well, I think what you're doing is wonderful. This community with its sense of history and documenting is just something I've always appreciated. Taken a lot of history classes with Sandy Leiden and know him personally because I've worked with him on the advisory committee at Nice St. Mark's. We just have to hope that we can get people to realize this could happen again at any time. And I said to someone the other night, how much gas do you have in your car? Because I do try to keep it at a half, at least, just because I know the pumps give out. I can't get gas down here. Just little things like that. You can only do so much. And I had my house retrofitted because I knew how much movement had taken place there, and did the whole downstairs with retrofitting it. I think it's safer than it was originally, but it didn't go down.
Still hanging on.
Yeah, I think I've covered all.
Great. Well, thank you so much for coming and sharing your story. I really appreciate it.
And I appreciate your effort on it. I think it's wonderful.